German Shepherd saves pregnant cat from venomous snake, but seconds later, something unexpected happens. In the vast expanse of Montana's Bitterroot Valley, where the wilderness meets civilization, Sarah Thompson's ranch stood as a testament to generations of family heritage. The spring night was unusually quiet, broken only by the gentle rustling of pine trees in the cool mountain breeze. Inside the main house, Duke, Sarah's loyal German Shepherd, lay alert by the fireplace, his ears perked up at the slightest sound from outside. Duke had always been more than just a pet to Sarah. After losing her husband Jack in an accident 3 years ago, the dog became her constant companion, helping her manage the sprawling 200-acre ranch. His intuition and protective nature had proven invaluable countless times, especially during the challenging Montana winters. That night, something felt different. Duke's behavior changed suddenly, his muscles tensing as he caught an unfamiliar scent drifting through the partially open window. Sarah noticed his sudden alertness, but continued with her evening routine, reviewing the ranch's financial records at her desk. The property had been struggling lately, and she was considering selling part of the land to keep the rest operational. Duke's low growl drew her attention away from the paperwork. Before she could react, he was already at the back door, pawing at it with unusual urgency. Sarah knew better than to ignore his instincts. Over the years, Duke had warned her about everything from approaching storms to wandering wildlife. She grabbed her flashlight and followed him out onto the back porch. The spring air was crisp, carrying the sweet scent of wildflowers that bloomed across the valley. Duke moved with purpose, his powerful frame gliding through the tall grass, toward the old stone wall that marked the edge of the garden. Sarah followed, her boots crunching softly on the gravel path. The beam of her flashlight swept across the yard, catching glimpses of the familiar landscape until it settled on something unusual near the wall. There, huddled in the shadow of an ancient oak tree, was a pregnant cat. Her fur was matted and she trembled visibly, clearly exhausted and afraid. Sarah had seen many strays before. It wasn't uncommon for people to abandon their pets near rural properties, but something about this one was different. The cat's eyes held an intelligence and desperation that tugged at Sarah's heart. Duke approached the cat slowly, his behavior surprising Sarah. Usually territorial around strays, he instead showed an unusual gentleness. The cat, though clearly terrified, didn't run. It was as if she somehow sensed Duke's protective nature. Sarah watched in amazement as her typically assertive German Shepherd lay down a few feet from the cat, making himself appear less threatening. But then Duke's demeanor changed dramatically. His muscles tensed, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Sarah raised her flashlight, scanning the area, trying to understand what had triggered his response. The beam caught a subtle movement in the grass, something long and sinuous sliding. Through the shadows, Sarah's heart nearly stopped when she recognized the distinctive pattern of a prairie rattlesnake. In all her years on the ranch, she'd encountered them before, but never this close to the house. The snake was moving purposefully toward the cat, who seemed too weak and frightened to move. Duke's reaction was immediate and unexpected. Instead of backing away from the threat, he positioned himself between the snake and the cat. Sarah called out to him, fear gripping her heart, but Duke stood his ground. The snake, disturbed by the dog's presence, raised its head, its rattle creating an ominous warning in the quiet night. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Sarah watched helplessly as Duke lunged forward, trying to drive the snake away from the cat. The snake struck with lightning speed, and Sarah's scream pierced the night air as she saw it connect with Duke's shoulder. The German Shepherd yelped, but didn't retreat. Instead, he used his body to push the cat toward Sarah, away from danger. The snake, having spent its venom, slithered away into the darkness, leaving Sarah to deal with the aftermath of its attack. Duke stumbled, the effects of the venom already visible in his unsteady gait. Sarah's ranch experience kicked in, and she knew she had precious little time to get him help. The nearest veterinary clinic was in Hamilton, a 30-minute drive away. Without hesitation, Sarah ran back to the house, grabbing her truck keys and the emergency blanket she kept by the door. When she returned, she found something that stopped her in her tracks. The cat had moved closer to Duke, pressing against his uninjured side as if trying to support him. The sight brought tears to Sarah's eyes, but she knew there was no time for sentiment. Sarah's old pickup truck roared to life, its headlights cutting through the darkness as she carefully helped Duke into the back seat. The German shepherd's breathing was labored, and his usual alertness was fading. Just as she was about to close the door, a flash of movement caught her eye. The pregnant cat had somehow managed to jump into the truck, settling herself next to Duke. "You want to come too, girl?" Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. There was something about the cat's determination that reminded her of herself. That stubborn refusal to give up, to abandon someone in need. Making a split-second decision, she left the cat where she was and slammed the door shut. The drive to Hamilton seemed endless. The usually peaceful mountain road now felt like an obstacle course, each curve and bump causing Duke to whimper softly. Sarah kept glancing in the rearview mirror, her heart breaking at the sight of her faithful companion struggling to stay conscious. The cat remained pressed against Duke's side, occasionally making soft sounds that seemed almost like words of encouragement. As she drove, Sarah's mind wandered to the day Duke came into her life. It was Jack who had insisted on getting the German shepherd puppy, claiming every ranch needed a good guard dog. "He'll protect you when I'm not around," Jack had said, not knowing how prophetic those words would become. Now, watching Duke fight for his life, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if she was about to lose another family member. The lights of Hamilton's all-night veterinary clinic finally came into view, a beacon of hope in the darkness. Sarah had called ahead, and Dr. Emily Martinez was already waiting outside with a gurney when she pulled up. The young veterinarian had been fresh out of school when she first came to Hamilton, but she had quickly earned the trust of the local ranching community. With her skill and dedication, "What happened?" Dr. Martinez asked, helping Sarah transfer Duke onto the gurney. Her experienced hands moved quickly over the dog's body, assessing his condition. "Rattlesnake bite," Sarah explained, her voice trembling. "He was protecting this cat." She gestured to the pregnant feline, who was now watching the proceedings with intense interest from the truck's back seat. Dr. Martinez's eyebrows rose slightly at the unusual situation, but her professional demeanor never wavered. "We need to act fast. The fact that he's still conscious is a good sign, but the next few hours will be critical." As they wheeled Duke into the clinic, the cat suddenly leaped from the truck and followed them, refusing to be left behind. Something about her behavior struck Dr. Martinez as unusual, and she made a quick decision. Let her come in. Sometimes animals sense things we don't, and right now Duke can use all the support he can get. Inside the clinic's treatment room, the harsh fluorescent lights revealed the full extent of Duke's condition. The bite area was swollen, and his breathing had become more labored. Dr. Martinez worked efficiently, administering anti-venom while her assistant set up IV fluids. Sarah stood by, feeling helpless, with the mysterious cat now perched on a nearby counter, her eyes never leaving Duke. "Sarah," Dr. Martinez said gently, "you should go home and get some rest. This is going to be a long night, and there's nothing more you can do here." But Sarah shook her head firmly. "I'm not leaving him." Her voice carried the same determination that had helped her keep the ranch running after Jack's accident. "Besides," she added, glancing at the cat, "I think we're all in this together now." As if in response to Sarah's words, the cat suddenly became restless, making strange sounds and moving awkwardly on the counter. Dr. Martinez's attention immediately shifted to the feline, her experienced eyes widening with recognition. "She's going into labor," the vet announced, quickly assessing the situation. "Sarah, help me set up another treatment area. This night just got a lot more complicated." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. In one corner of the clinic, Duke fought against the effects of the snake venom, his strong spirit refusing to give in. In another, the mysterious cat began the process of bringing new life into the world. Sarah found herself moving between the two, offering comfort and support where she could, while Dr. Martinez and her team worked tirelessly to save both animals. As dawn began to paint the Montana sky in shades of pink and gold, Sarah stood by Duke's side, gently stroking his fur. The antivenom had helped stabilize his condition, but he remained weak and unresponsive. The cat, now resting in a comfortable bed, had successfully delivered 5 healthy kittens, their tiny mews filling the quiet clinic with sounds of new life. Dr. Martinez approached Sarah, her face showing signs of exhaustion after the long night. "Duke's a fighter," she said, checking his vital signs once again. "But there's something else you should know. While we were treating him, I noticed some unusual patterns in his blood work. I've sent samples to a specialist in Missoula for analysis." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of patterns? What does it mean?" The vet's expression was thoughtful as she replied, "It could be nothing, but there might be more to Duke's condition than just the snakebite. We need to wait for the results to be sure." The early morning light filtered through the clinic's windows as Sarah watched Duke's chest rise and fall with labored breaths. The effects of the snake venom were taking their toll, and his usually bright eyes remained closed. In the adjacent area, the cat lay with her newborn kittens, all 5 of them nursing contentedly, seemingly unaware of the drama unfolding around them. Dr. Martinez had been monitoring Duke's condition throughout the night, checking his vital signs and adjusting his medication as needed. The antivenom was working, but the German Shepherd's body had taken a severe hit. His shoulder, where the snake had struck, was swollen and tender, and his once powerful frame seemed diminished somehow. "His body temperature is still elevated," Dr. Martinez noted, recording the latest readings in Duke's chart. "The next few hours will be crucial. We need to watch for any signs of improvement or deterioration." Sarah nodded silently, her hand never leaving Duke's fur. She thought about all the times he had been there for her, especially after Jack's accident. Duke had become her rock, her constant companion through the lonely nights and challenging days of running the ranch alone. The thought of losing him was almost unbearable. The cat, whom Sarah had started calling Hope, seemed to share her concern. Despite having just given birth, she kept trying to make her way to Duke's side. Dr. Martinez, initially worried about potential complications for the new mother, was amazed by the cat's determination. "I've never seen anything quite like this," the vet admitted, watching as Hope carefully made her way to Duke's bed once again, leaving her kittens safely nestled in their warm blanket. "It's as if she knows he saved her life, and now she's trying to return the favor." Hope settled herself near Duke's head, occasionally touching his face with her paw, as if trying to wake him. Her gentle purring filled the room, creating a soothing atmosphere that seemed to have a calming effect on the injured dog. Sarah could have sworn she saw Duke's tail twitch slightly in response. As the morning progressed, other staff members arrived at the clinic, and word spread about the unusual pair. The local vet tech, Jenny Williams, was particularly moved by the story. "Animals never cease to amaze me," she said, helping Dr. Martinez change Duke's bandages. "They're capable of such profound connections, sometimes even deeper than human ones." Sarah spent the morning making calls to her ranch hands, ensuring the daily operations would continue in her absence. She couldn't bring herself to leave Duke's side, not when his condition was still so uncertain. The cat seemed to share her vigilance, dividing her time between nursing her kittens and checking on Duke. Around noon, Dr. Martinez noticed something concerning in Duke's blood pressure readings. The numbers were dropping, and his breathing had become more labored. The vet immediately began adjusting his medication, her face tense with concentration. "Sarah," she said carefully, "I need to be honest with you. Duke's condition is more complicated than we initially thought. The venom has affected his system severely, and his body is struggling to cope. We're doing everything we can, but—" Before she could finish, Hope suddenly became extremely agitated. The cat moved to Duke's side and began making unusual sounds, almost like she was trying to communicate something. To everyone's surprise, Duke's eyes flickered slightly, responding to her presence. Dr. Martinez quickly checked his vital signs again, her expression changing from concern to cautious optimism. "His numbers are stabilizing," she announced, somewhat incredulously. "I can't explain it, but something's helping him fight back." Sarah watched in amazement as Hope continued her gentle interaction with Duke, her presence seeming to have a profound effect on the injured dog. The cat's purring grew louder, and gradually Duke's breathing became more regular. It was as if some unspoken connection between them was helping him find his way back. The afternoon passed with small signs of improvement. Duke's fever began to subside, and his vital signs slowly strengthened. Hope remained faithfully by his side, leaving only briefly to feed her kittens before returning to her self-appointed post as guardian. Dr. Martinez was cautiously optimistic, but still concerned about the underlying issues she had detected in Duke's blood work. "The specialist in Missoula called back," she told Sarah privately. "They've found something interesting in his blood samples, something that might explain why he's responding so unusually to both the venom and Hope's presence." Sarah looked at the vet questioningly, but before she could ask for more details, a commotion from Duke's bed drew their attention. The German Shepherd had opened his eyes fully for the first time since the snake bite, his gaze immediately finding Hope beside him. The cat responded by gently touching his nose with hers, a gesture so tender it brought tears to Sarah's eyes. The following days at Hamilton's veterinary clinic became a testament to the power of unlikely friendships. Duke's condition, though still serious, showed steady signs of improvement. Hope had established a routine that amazed the entire clinic staff. She would nurse her kittens, then spend hours by Duke's side, as if her presence alone could chase away the lingering effects of the snake's venom. Dr. Martinez had never seen anything quite like it in her 15 years of veterinary practice. "The bond between them is extraordinary," she explained to Sarah one morning, while checking Duke's vital signs. "It's almost as if Hope's presence is having a therapeutic effect on his recovery. His numbers are consistently better when she's near him." Sarah spent every possible moment at the clinic, dividing her time between managing the ranch remotely and supporting Duke's recovery. She had converted a small corner of the treatment room into a makeshift office, her laptop balanced on her knees as she handled emails and phone calls. The ranch hands, especially old Tom Miller, who had worked for her family for decades, kept things running smoothly in her absence. "You know what's really remarkable?" Jenny, the vet tech, observed one afternoon. "The way Duke responds to the kittens." She was right. Despite his weakened state, Duke would perk up whenever Hope brought her babies near him. The tiny kittens, just beginning to open their eyes, seemed drawn to the gentle giant who had saved their mother. One kitten, in particular, a little grey ball of fluff with white paws, had developed a special attachment to Duke. Hope would often place this kitten, whom Sarah had started calling Shadow, closest to Duke during their visits. The German Shepherd would watch the tiny creature with such tenderness that it was hard to believe he was the same fierce protector who had faced down a rattlesnake. As the days passed, Dr. Martinez continued to monitor Duke's blood work closely. The results from Missoula had revealed something fascinating about his genetic makeup, something that might explain his extraordinary resilience. "There's a rare genetic marker in his DNA," she explained to Sarah. "It's something we occasionally see in working dogs, particularly those bred for rescue operations. It might explain why he's responding so well to this unconventional recovery process." The clinic had become something of a local attraction, with word spreading about the unlikely friendship between the brave German shepherd and the stray cat he had saved. Dr. Martinez had to politely turn away numerous visitors who wanted to witness the heartwarming scene for themselves. "Duke needs peace and quiet to recover," she would explain, though she understood their curiosity. Sarah noticed that Duke's strength was returning gradually. His eyes, once dulled by pain and medication, had regained their alert expression. He could now lift his head to greet Hope whenever she approached, and his tail would wag weakly but enthusiastically when Shadow curled up against his side. One particularly memorable afternoon, Duke attempted to stand for the first time since the snake bite. His legs were shaky and his movements uncertain, but his determination was evident. Hope watched attentively from nearby, her tail twitching with nervous energy. When Duke stumbled slightly, she was immediately at his side, offering support in her own way. "Easy there, big guy," Sarah encouraged, her heart swelling with pride and hope. Dr. Martinez supervised the attempt carefully, noting Duke's movements and checking for any signs of distress. "This is actually very promising," the vet said. "His muscle response is much better than I expected at this stage." The other kittens had begun to explore their surroundings more confidently, creating an amusing scene in the treatment room. They would wobble around on unsteady legs, their tiny meows filling the air with sounds of life and renewal. Duke watched them with obvious interest, his protective instincts still evident even in his weakened state. Hope's maternal instincts seemed to extend beyond her own offspring. She would frequently groom Duke's face and ears, paying special attention to the area around his wound, which was healing well but still tender. The German shepherd accepted her ministrations with remarkable patience, as if understanding the care behind her actions. Dr. Martinez had started discussing the possibility of Duke returning home soon, though with strict conditions for his continued recovery. "He'll need regular checkups," she explained to Sarah, "and we'll need to monitor his activity levels carefully. No heroic rescues for a while." The mention of home brought mixed emotions for Sarah. While she was eager to have Duke back at the ranch, she worried about separating him from Hope and her kittens. The bond they had formed seemed too precious to break. As if reading her thoughts, Hope jumped onto the examination table where they were discussing Duke's future, her presence a reminder that some connections transcend ordinary boundaries. The morning sun painted the Bitterroot Valley in shades of gold as Sarah prepared for Duke's homecoming. After 2 weeks at the veterinary clinic, Dr. Martinez had finally given the green light for his discharge, though with a lengthy list of care instructions and follow-up appointments. The real challenge now wasn't just getting Duke home, it was figuring out how to keep his newfound family together. "I've never seen anything quite like this in my career," Dr. Martinez admitted as she helped Sarah prepare for the transfer. "Usually we worry about dogs and cats getting along at all, but these two." She gestured toward Duke and Hope, who were currently sharing space on Duke's recovery bed, the kittens safely nestled between them. "They've created their own little family unit." Sarah had spent the past few days preparing the ranch house for its new residents. The spare room off the kitchen, once used for storage, had been transformed into a comfortable space for Hope and her kittens. She'd installed a special gate that would allow Hope to come and go while keeping the kittens safely contained. Duke's bed had been moved nearby, ensuring he could maintain his self-appointed role as protector. The preparations at home hadn't gone unnoticed by the ranch hands. Old Tom, who had initially raised an eyebrow at the idea of bringing in a cat family, had surprised Sarah by building a series of small climbing platforms along the walls of the spare room. "Cats like to be up high," he'd explained gruffly, though Sarah caught the soft smile beneath his weathered exterior. Back at the clinic, the discharge process was taking longer than expected, not due to medical complications, but because of the logistics of moving the unusual family. Hope had made it clear she wouldn't be separated from Duke, even for the short drive home. When Sarah opened the carrier she'd brought for the cat and kittens, Hope had promptly ignored it and settled herself next to Duke in the back of the truck. "She's definitely made her choice," Jenny observed, helping to arrange blankets around Duke and his feline companions. The kittens, now 3 weeks old and increasingly active, were secured in a cozy carrier placed right next to Duke. Shadow, the grey kitten who had formed such a special bond with the German Shepherd, mewed plaintively until the carrier was positioned where he could maintain eye contact with his canine protector. Dr. Martinez handed Sarah a thick folder containing Duke's medical records and care instructions. "His recovery has been remarkable," she said, "but he's not out of the woods yet. The venom caused some changes in his system that we're still trying to understand. That's why those weekly checkups are crucial." Sarah nodded, remembering the mysterious blood test results that had sparked so much interest from the specialists in Missoula. Duke's unusual genetic marker, combined with his extraordinary response to Hope's presence, had become something of a medical marvel. Researchers had already reached out to Dr. Martinez, interested in studying this unique case of interspecies healing. The drive home was peaceful, with Duke resting comfortably in the back seat, Hope maintaining her vigilant position beside him. The Montana landscape rolled by, the familiar sight of grazing cattle and distant mountains serving as a welcome reminder of home. Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed since that fateful night when Duke had risked everything to save a stranger. As they turned onto the ranch's long driveway, Sarah noticed Duke's ears perk up. Despite his still weakened state, he recognized home. Hope, sensing his excitement, moved closer to him, her purring audible even over the truck's engine. The kittens, picking up on the change in energy, began mewing more actively in their carrier. The welcome committee waiting at the house made Sarah smile. Tom and the other ranch hands had gathered on the porch, trying to look casual but failing to hide their anticipation. They had all grown fond of Duke over the years, appreciating his intelligence and dedication to the ranch's workings. The story of his brave rescue had only enhanced their respect for him. Sarah parked close to the house, wanting to minimize the distance Duke would need to walk. His strength was returning, but he still tired easily, and the doctor had stressed the importance of not overexerting himself during these first few days at home. As she opened the truck's back door, she was struck by the tableau before her. Duke, the powerful German Shepherd, still bearing the visible signs of his ordeal, with Hope pressed protectively against his side, both of them watching over the carrier containing the next generation of their unlikely family. The moment was interrupted by an excited bark from Duke, his first since the snake bite. The sound, though weaker than his usual robust voice, brought tears to Sarah's eyes. It was as if he was announcing his return, not just to the ranch, but to life itself. The first few days back at the ranch established a new rhythm for its inhabitants. Duke's recovery room, with its carefully arranged beds and Tom's handcrafted cat platforms, had become the heart of the household. Sarah found herself spending more time there than in any other part of the house, watching the extraordinary dynamic between her canine hero and his adopted family. Hope had taken to ranch life with surprising ease. She'd established her own routine, dividing her time between caring for her kittens and tending to Duke. The German Shepherd's wound was healing well, but he still needed regular rest periods, during which Hope would settle beside him, her gentle purring seeming to ease his discomfort. Little Shadow, the grey kitten, had become increasingly attached to Duke. While his siblings explored their new surroundings with typical kitten curiosity, Shadow preferred to stay close to the German Shepherd. He would often climb onto Duke's bed, curling up against the dog's neck or between his front paws, completely trusting and utterly content. Sarah watched this interaction with amazement, remembering Duke's first night home when Shadow had refused to sleep in the kitten bed. The tiny cat had cried until Sarah placed him near Duke, after which both animals immediately settled into peaceful sleep. Dr. Martinez, during her first house call, had been fascinated by this deepening bond. "It's like they're sharing some kind of healing energy," the vet had observed, checking Duke's vital signs while Shadow watched attentively from his favorite spot. "Duke's recovery is progressing faster than I expected, and I can't help but think these little ones have something to do with it." The ranch hands had adjusted to the new additions with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Old Tom, despite his initial skepticism, had become an unexpected ally. He'd taken to leaving small treats for Hope and spending his lunch breaks in the recovery room, claiming he was just checking on Duke while secretly dangling string for the kittens. One particularly memorable afternoon, Sarah was working on the ranch's accounts when she heard an unusual commotion from Duke's room. Rushing in, she found a scene that made her heart swell. Duke had managed to stand up on his own, and all 5 kittens were attempting to walk beside him, mimicking his slow, careful movements. Hope watched from one of Tom's platforms, her tail twitching with what seemed like maternal pride. "Well, would you look at that?" Tom's voice came from the doorway. "Looks like we've got ourselves a proper family." The old ranch hand's eyes were suspiciously moist as he watched Duke gently nudge one of the kittens back into line with his nose. The specialist from Missoula, Dr. Anderson, had made a special trip to observe this unique case. She spent hours taking notes on the interactions between Duke and his feline family, particularly interested in the way his vital signs improved whenever Hope or the kittens were near him. "There's something remarkable happening here," she explained to Sarah. "The genetic marker we found in Duke's blood shows an unusual capacity for cellular regeneration, but it's the interaction with these cats that seems to be activating it. It's as if their presence is triggering his body's natural healing abilities." The days fell into a comfortable pattern. Each morning, Sarah would help Duke with his gentle exercise routine, walking him slowly around the room while Hope supervised from various vantage points. The kittens would tumble after them, Shadow always closest to Duke's heels. In the afternoons, when Duke rested, the other kittens would explore further afield, but Shadow remained his faithful companion. The ranch itself seemed to have taken on a different atmosphere. The usual sounds of cattle and machinery were now accompanied by the patter of tiny paws and the occasional meow. Even the most hardened ranch hands found themselves smiling at the sight of Duke, the ranch's fierce protector, playing gentle games with his tiny feline charges. Sarah had started documenting these interactions, partly at Dr. Martinez's request and partly for herself. There was something magical about watching Duke's patient interaction with the kittens, especially when they attempted to copy his movements. He would lie still as they climbed over him, only moving to gently reposition one if it got too close to his healing wound. One evening, as the sun set over the Bitterroot Mountains, Sarah sat in her favorite chair, watching Duke and his family. Hope had arranged all 5 kittens around the German Shepherd for their evening nap, with Shadow in his usual spot near Duke's head. The scene was so peaceful, so perfect, that Sarah finally allowed herself to believe that everything would be all right. As spring blossomed into early summer in the Bitterroot Valley, Duke's recovery continued to amaze everyone who witnessed it. The German Shepherd's strength was returning more rapidly than anyone had predicted, and Dr. Martinez attributed much of this progress to his unique support system. The bond between Duke and his feline family had grown stronger with each passing day, creating a dynamic that defied conventional understanding. During one of her regular checkups, Dr. Martinez shared her observations with Sarah. Duke's latest blood work shows remarkable improvement, she explained, reviewing the charts. The healing pattern we're seeing is unprecedented. It's as if the presence of Hope and the kittens is somehow accelerating his natural recovery process. The changes were visible in Duke's daily routine. He could now manage longer walks around the ranch house, always accompanied by his faithful Shadow, both the kitten named Shadow and his own growing strength. The other kittens had developed their own unique ways of interacting with their canine protector, but Shadow's devotion remained exceptional. One morning, Sarah witnessed a scene that perfectly captured the extraordinary nature of their relationship. Duke was resting on the porch, enjoying the warm Montana sunshine, when a small rabbit appeared in the garden. Before his injury, Duke would have immediately given chase. It was his natural instinct as a ranch dog. Instead, he remained perfectly still, despite being clearly alert to the rabbit's presence. The reason became clear moments later. Shadow was stalking the rabbit, practicing his hunting skills with the serious concentration only a kitten can muster. "Look at that," Tom chuckled, pausing in his work to watch. "Big fella's teaching the little one how to be patient. Never thought I'd see the day when a German shepherd would be giving hunting lessons to a cat." Hope, who had been watching from her favorite perch on the porch railing, seemed to approve of this impromptu lesson. She had developed an uncanny ability to anticipate Duke's needs, often appearing with one of her kittens just when the dog seemed to be feeling restless or uncomfortable. Her maternal instincts had expanded to include Duke, and she treated him with the same careful attention she gave her own offspring. The specialist from Missoula had become a regular visitor to the ranch, fascinated by the ongoing developments. The interaction between Duke and these cats goes beyond simple companionship, Dr. Anderson explained during one of her visits. The genetic marker we identified in Duke's blood shows increased activity when he's in close contact with them. It's as if their presence is triggering some kind of enhanced healing response. Sarah had noticed other changes too. Duke's protective instincts, always strong, had evolved to accommodate his new family. He would position himself where he could, watch both the kittens at play and the surrounding ranch land, maintaining his role as guardian while adapting to his new responsibilities. The way he handled the kittens, especially when they were learning to navigate the world around them, showed remarkable gentleness and patience. The other kittens had grown more adventurous, exploring further into the ranch under Hope's watchful eye, but Shadow remained Duke's constant companion. The little gray kitten had developed an almost uncanny ability to sense when Duke needed rest, often herding his siblings away when their play became too energetic near the recovering dog. One particularly memorable afternoon, Sarah caught sight of Duke attempting something he hadn't done since before the snake bite, climbing the gentle slope behind the house to his favorite watching spot. Her heart jumped with concern, but before she could intervene, she noticed he wasn't alone. Hope walked beside him, matching his pace, while Shadow trotted ahead, seemingly encouraging Duke's progress. "Well, I'll be," Tom said softly, appearing at Sarah's side. "Those cats are better physical therapists than any human could be." They watched as Duke made it to the top of the slope, settling down with a satisfied expression while his feline companions took up positions around him, Hope on one side and Shadow pressed against his chest. The ranch hands had started calling them the Miracle Family, a term that caught on with Dr. Martinez and her staff. The veterinarian had begun documenting the case for a medical journal, believing that understanding the unique bond between these animals could have implications for veterinary medicine as a whole. Sarah found herself spending every free moment observing their interactions. She'd set up a comfortable chair near Duke's favorite spots, working on her laptop while watching the daily dynamics unfold. The kittens had developed their own personalities. the adventurous twins who loved exploring the barn, the shy one, who preferred the safety of the porch, and the curious one who followed Hope everywhere. But Shadow remained unique in his dedication to Duke, as if he somehow understood the debt of life he owed to the brave dog. The Montana summer had settled into a gentle rhythm at the Thompson Ranch, bringing with it new milestones in Duke's recovery. The German Shepherd's progress had exceeded all expectations, and his daily routines now included longer walks around the property, always accompanied by his devoted feline family. Hope and Shadow remained his constant companions, while the other kittens drifted in and out of their orbit like playful satellites. Dr. Martinez's latest visit had brought more encouraging news. "His muscle tone is almost back to normal," she reported, running her hands along Duke's shoulder where the snake had struck. "The wound has healed remarkably well, and his energy levels are increasing steadily." The veterinarian paused, watching as Shadow immediately reclaimed his position next to Duke after the examination. "Though I have to admit, I've never seen anything quite like this relationship in all my years of practice." The bond between Duke and Shadow had indeed become something extraordinary. The little grey kitten, now growing into a sleek young cat, had developed an almost supernatural ability to anticipate Duke's needs. He seemed to know exactly when the German Shepherd needed rest, often positioning himself strategically to discourage too much activity, and when Duke was ready for more exercise, Shadow would be the first to encourage him to move. One morning, Sarah witnessed a scene that perfectly illustrated their unique connection. Duke had been resting on the porch when a delivery truck pulled up to the ranch house, an unusual occurrence that would normally have sent him rushing to investigate. Before he could get up too quickly, something Dr. Martinez had warned against. Shadow positioned himself firmly against Duke's chest, purring loudly. The big dog settled back down, accepting the kitten's guidance with remarkable patience. "That little cat's got more sense than most humans," Tom observed, having watched the interaction from nearby. "Knows exactly what the big fella needs, doesn't he?" The old ranch hand had become one of the most devoted observers of the unlikely family, often spending his break times watching their interactions with undisguised fascination. Hope's role in Duke's recovery had evolved as well. She maintained her position as both mother and nurse, but there was something almost mystical about the way she worked in tandem with Shadow to care for Duke. When the German Shepherd seemed restless or uncomfortable, Hope would appear with several of her kittens, creating a purring circle around him that never failed to help him relax. Dr. Anderson, the specialist from Missoula, had become increasingly intrigued by the healing powers of this feline therapy. "The vibration frequency of a cat's purr has been studied for its therapeutic properties," she explained during one of her visits. "But what we're seeing here goes beyond that. The combination of Hope's maternal instincts and Shadow's devoted companionship seems to be creating an optimal healing environment for Duke." The ranch itself had adapted to accommodate its unique residents. Tom and the other hands had constructed a series of elevated walkways connecting the porch to the barn, allowing Hope and her growing kittens safe passage above the ground. Duke would watch their acrobatics with what Sarah swore was pride, his tail wagging gently whenever Shadow performed a particularly impressive leap. One afternoon, Sarah came across a sight that made her heart swell. Duke had made his way to the barn for the first time since his injury, and what she found there was remarkable. The German Shepherd was lying in a patch of sunlight, surrounded by fresh hay, while Hope's kittens played an elaborate game of chase around him. Shadow, true to form, remained closest to Duke, occasionally reaching out to pat the dog's nose with a gentle paw. "You've got yourself quite the family there," Dr. Martinez commented during her next visit, watching as Duke carefully monitored the kitten's play while maintaining his rest position. It's amazing how they've all adapted to each other's needs. Duke's protective instincts have found a new purpose, and these cats seem to understand exactly what he needs in return. Progress in Duke's recovery was now visible in more than just his physical condition. His eyes had regained their bright, alert expression, and his coat had recovered its healthy shine. But perhaps most remarkable was the way he had adapted his natural guarding instincts to accommodate his new family. He remained vigilant about the ranch's security, but now he did it in partnership with Hope and Shadow, creating a unique surveillance system that combined canine strength with feline agility. Sarah had begun keeping a journal of their daily interactions, partly at Dr. Anderson's request and partly for herself. She documented the way Shadow would alert Duke to potential issues before they became problems, how Hope would intervene when the other kittens played too roughly near Duke's healing shoulder, and the countless small moments of connection that made their relationship so special. The late summer sun cast long shadows across the Thompson Ranch as Duke made his morning rounds, moving with a strength and confidence that seemed almost miraculous given his condition just months ago. The German Shepherd's recovery had become a source of amazement for everyone who knew his story, but perhaps even more remarkable was the way his daily routine had evolved to include his adopted family. Shadow, now almost fully grown, but still dedicated to his canine protector, trotted alongside Duke as they patrolled the property. The young cat had developed an uncanny ability to move in perfect synchronization with the dog, matching his pace and anticipating his movements. Hope often watched from elevated vantage points, supervising both her grown offspring and her unlikely companion with maternal attention. It's not just that Duke has recovered, Dr. Martinez observed during her latest checkup. It's how he's recovered. The way these animals work together, it's like they've created their own support system that goes beyond anything we could have provided medically. The veterinarian watched as Shadow demonstrated his usual post-examination routine carefully, inspecting Duke himself once she had finished. The other kittens, now young cats themselves, had developed their own unique relationships with Duke. While they weren't as constantly devoted as Shadow, they had learned to work with the German Shepherd in ways that continued to amaze the ranch hands. They would alert him to anything unusual on the property, using their superior climbing abilities to access vantage points he couldn't reach. Sarah had witnessed countless moments that demonstrated the depth of their connection. One particularly memorable morning, she watched as Duke led the entire feline family on his rounds, each cat taking up strategic positions as they moved through the property. Hope would scout ahead, while her other offspring spread out to cover different areas, with Shadow remaining faithfully by Duke's side. It's like watching a perfectly choreographed dance, Dr. Anderson commented during one of her research visits. Each animal knows its role and how to support the others. The genetic marker we found in Duke's blood might explain his physical recovery, but this level of cooperation, this emotional bond, that's something entirely different. The ranch itself had been transformed by the unique dynamic of its unusual family. Tom and the other hands had continued to adapt the property to accommodate both canine and feline needs, creating an environment where they could work together effectively. The elevated walkways they'd built now extended throughout the property, allowing the cats to keep pace with Duke, even when the terrain was challenging. One afternoon, Sarah witnessed a scene that perfectly encapsulated the extraordinary nature of their relationship. A young deer had wandered onto the property, catching everyone's attention. In the past, Duke would have immediately given chase, but now he worked in concert with his feline family. Hope took up a position on the fence, Shadow flanked Duke's right side, and the other cats spread out strategically. Together, they managed to guide the deer back toward the property line without any aggressive pursuit. "Now that's something you don't see every day," Tom remarked, shaking his head in amazement. A German shepherd and 5 cats working together like a well-oiled machine. Jack would have loved to see this. He quickly glanced at Sarah, concerned he might have touched a sensitive subject, but she was smiling. He would have, she agreed, softly. But I think he somehow knew what he was doing when he insisted we get Duke. He always said there was something special about him. The bond between Duke and Shadow continued to deepen in unique ways. The young cat had developed a habit of sleeping curled up against Duke's formerly injured shoulder, and Sarah often wondered if there wasn't some continuing healing effect in this close contact. Dr. Martinez had noted that the area remained remarkably healthy, with no lingering stiffness or weakness. Hope's relationship with Duke had evolved into something akin to a partnership. She seemed to understand that while Shadow was Duke's devoted companion, she herself was his equal in maintaining the safety and harmony of their unusual family. The way they communicated with subtle glances and small movements spoke of a deep understanding that transcended their natural species barrier. Dr. Anderson had begun preparing a paper about Duke's case for a prestigious veterinary journal. "What we're seeing here isn't just about physical recovery," she explained to Sarah. "It's about the way these animals have created their own support network, their own family structure. The healing we've witnessed goes far beyond the physical. It's emotional, behavioral, even social." The other cats had each found their own ways to contribute to Duke's well-being. One would always alert him to approaching vehicles before he could hear them himself, allowing him to conserve his energy. Another had taken to checking the properties, fences, using her climbing abilities to spot any issues that needed attention. They had created a surveillance system that combined the best of both species. The crisp autumn air brought new energy to the Thompson Ranch, and with it came the full realization of just how far Duke had come in his recovery. The German shepherd now moved with the same power and grace he had possessed before the snakebite, but there was something different about him, a newfound wisdom that seemed to radiate from his every action. His partnership with Hope and her family had evolved into something extraordinary, changing not just their lives, but the entire dynamic of the ranch. Dr. Martinez could hardly believe the transformation during her latest visit. "When I first treated Duke after the snakebite, I wasn't sure he would even survive," she admitted, watching as the German shepherd effortlessly led his daily patrol, Shadow matching his stride perfectly. "Now look at him. He's not just recovered, he's thriving in ways I never would have imagined possible." The morning routine at the ranch had taken on an almost choreographed quality. Duke would begin his rounds at sunrise, with Shadow always at his side and Hope coordinating the movements of her other offspring from various vantage points. The cats had developed an intricate system of signals, using different meows and body positions to communicate important information to Duke, who had learned to read and respond to each one. Sarah watched in amazement one morning as this system proved its worth. One of Hope's other kittens, now a sleek young cat, had spotted a potential issue with one of the fence lines. Instead of Duke having to make the long trek to inspect it himself, the cats worked in relay, passing the information along until it reached him. He then made a direct path to the problem area, conserving his energy while maintaining his oversight of the ranch. "It's like they've created their own little intelligence network," Tom observed, leaning on his fence post. "Those cats are Duke's. Eyes and ears all over the property, and he's their muscle when they need it. Never seen anything like it in all my years of ranching." The bond between Duke and Shadow remained especially profound. The young cat had grown into a handsome adult, but his devotion to Duke never wavered. He seemed to have an almost supernatural ability to sense what Duke needed, whether it was a moment of rest, some gentle exercise, or even just companionship. Their connection had become so well known that Dr. Anderson had made it a central focus of her research paper. The interaction between Duke and Shadow goes beyond simple companionship. she explained during one of her visits. They've developed a level of communication and mutual support that challenges our understanding of interspecies relationships. The way Shadow anticipates Duke's needs and how Duke responds to his guidance, it's extraordinary. Hope's role had evolved as well. She maintained her position as the matriarch of their unusual family, but her relationship with Duke had developed into something approaching a true partnership. They would often be seen conferring together, their body language suggesting a deep understanding as they coordinated the activities of their blended family. One particularly memorable afternoon, Sarah witnessed a scene that perfectly illustrated the depth of their connection. A summer storm was approaching, and Duke had seemed slightly uncomfortable. His healed shoulder sometimes acted up in changing weather. Without any visible signal, Hope gathered all her offspring, and they surrounded Duke in what Sarah had come to think of as their healing circle. Their combined purring seemed to ease his discomfort, and Shadow, as always, took his place nearest to the old injury. The healing power of their presence is remarkable. Dr. Martinez noted during a checkup, Duke's shoulder has healed better than any similar injury I've treated. The scar tissue is minimal, and he's maintained full range of motion. Something about his interaction with these cats, particularly Shadow, seems to promote optimal healing. The ranch hands had fully embraced the unusual family dynamic. They'd continued to improve the network of elevated pathways that allowed the cats to move efficiently around the property, and they'd even started keeping logs of the various signals and behaviors they observed between Duke and his feline family. These observations had become valuable additions to Dr. Anderson's research. Sarah had noticed another remarkable aspect of their relationship: the way Duke had adapted his protective instincts to account for his feline family's different abilities. Rather than trying to handle everything himself, he now worked in concert with the cats, using their natural agility and keen senses to create a more effective system of ranch security. It was as if he had learned to be not just a guard dog, but a leader who understood how to utilize the strengths of each family member. The story of Duke and his feline family had spread far beyond the boundaries of the Thompson Ranch, capturing the imagination of the entire Bitterroot Valley community. What had begun as a simple act of courage, a German shepherd protecting a pregnant cat from a snake, had blossomed into something that touched everyone who witnessed it. The bond between these animals had become a symbol of hope and healing that no one could have predicted. Dr. Martinez's veterinary clinic had begun receiving visitors from across Montana and neighboring states, all hoping to learn more about this extraordinary case. The veterinarian found herself regularly sharing Duke's story with colleagues and animal behaviorists who were fascinated by the unique healing dynamic between the dog and his adopted family. What we're seeing here isn't just about physical recovery anymore, Dr. Martinez explained to a group of visiting veterinarians. Duke's case has opened up new possibilities in understanding how different species can support each other's healing process. As if to demonstrate her point, Shadow chose that moment to lead Duke through a series of gentle stretching movements that had become part of their daily routine. The research paper Dr. Anderson had been working on had garnered significant attention in the veterinary community even before publication. The implications of Duke's recovery go far beyond this single case, she explained to Sarah one afternoon. The way these animals have created their own rehabilitation system, with the cats instinctively knowing how to support Duke's healing, it's revolutionary. Sarah had noticed that the ranch itself had taken on an almost magical quality in the eyes of visitors. People would stop by, ostensibly on business, but their real purpose was to witness the extraordinary dynamic between Duke and his feline family. The sight of the German shepherd patrolling the property with Shadow by his side and Hope coordinating her other offspring from above never failed to amaze newcomers. One particularly touching moment occurred when a family visited the ranch with their child, who was recovering from an injury. The young boy, initially withdrawn and nervous about the animals, was transfixed by the way Duke and Shadow worked together. The gentle interaction between the dog and cat seemed to speak to something deep within him, and his parents later told Sarah that the visit had given their son new hope for his own recovery. "There's something almost mystical about their connection," Tom remarked one evening, watching as Duke and his family settled in for their nightly routine. The German Shepherd would lie in his favorite spot on the porch, while Hope and her offspring arranged themselves around him in what the ranch hands had come to call their healing circle. Shadow, as always, took his place nearest to Duke's healed shoulder. The other cats had continued to develop their own unique roles within the family. Each one seemed to have found their specific way of contributing to Duke's well-being and the ranch's operation. One had become an expert at predicting weather changes, often alerting Duke to approaching storms before they were visible. Another had developed an uncanny ability to detect any unusual movement along the property's boundaries. Dr. Martinez had begun incorporating lessons learned from Duke's case into her treatment of other animals. "What we've learned here about interspecies support and natural healing has changed the way I approach rehabilitation," she shared with Sarah. "Sometimes the best medicine isn't something we can prescribe, it's the healing presence of other animals." The impact of Duke's story had reached beyond the medical community. Local schools had started requesting visits from Sarah to share the tale of courage, loyalty, and healing that had unfolded on her ranch. Children were particularly fascinated by Shadow's devotion to Duke and how the young cat had seemingly dedicated his life to supporting the dog who had saved his mother. One afternoon, as the autumn sun cast long shadows across the ranch, Sarah witnessed a scene that perfectly encapsulated the miracle that had occurred on her property. Duke, now fully recovered and strong as ever, was leading his daily patrol when he encountered a young deer trapped in some loose fencing. Instead of causing the deer additional stress, Duke worked in perfect coordination with his feline family to carefully free the animal. Hope supervised from above, while her offspring took up strategic positions around the area. Shadow stayed with Duke, seeming to communicate through subtle movements and gentle touches, helping the German Shepherd maintain the perfect balance between assertiveness and gentleness needed for the task. Together, they managed to guide the deer to safety without causing it any additional fear or harm. As winter approached the Bitterroot Valley, the Thompson Ranch stood as a testament to the extraordinary events that had unfolded there. Duke's story had become more than just a tale of survival. It was a living example of how courage, compassion, and unconditional love could transform lives in unexpected ways. The German Shepherd, once fighting for his life after a snake bite, had not only recovered, but had helped create something truly magical. A family that transcended the boundaries of species. The morning sun cast a golden glow across the frost-covered ground as Duke made his rounds, moving with the same strength and grace that had characterized him before his injury. Shadow, ever faithful, matched his stride perfectly, while Hope coordinated the movements of her other offspring from their elevated pathways. The scene had become familiar to everyone at the ranch, yet it never failed to inspire awe in those who witnessed it. "You know," Dr. Martinez said, during what had become more of a friendly visit than a medical checkup, "when I first treated Duke after the snake bite, I hoped we could save his life. I never imagined we'd end up witnessing something that would change our understanding of animal relationships forever." She watched as Shadow performed his usual post-examination routine, carefully checking Duke himself before giving what appeared to be a nod of approval. The research paper Dr. Anderson had written about Duke's case had been published in several prestigious veterinary journals, drawing attention from animal behaviorists and researchers worldwide. "What we've observed here goes beyond simple interspecies cooperation," she explained to a group of visiting scientists. These animals have created a sophisticated support system that combines the natural strengths of both species in ways we never thought possible. Sarah had noticed that the ranch itself had taken on a different energy. The presence of Duke and his feline family had created an atmosphere of harmony that seemed to affect everyone and everything around them. Even the cattle seemed calmer, responding to the unusual but effective partnership of canine strength and feline agility that now protected them. One crisp morning, Sarah witnessed a scene that perfectly captured the magnitude of what had developed on her ranch. A young colt had wandered away from its mother in the neighboring property, causing considerable distress to both animals. Before anyone could intervene, Duke and his family sprung into action with their now familiar coordination. Hope's offspring took up strategic positions, Shadow stayed with Duke, and together they gently guided the frightened colt back to its mother, demonstrating a level of sensitivity and cooperation that left the neighboring ranchers speechless. "It's like they've developed their own language," Tom observed, watching the daily interaction between Duke and his family. "The way they communicate, the way they work together. It's changed everything we thought we knew about animals." The old ranch hand had become one of the most enthusiastic chroniclers of their unique dynamic, keeping detailed notes that he shared with Dr. Anderson for her ongoing research. The impact of Duke's story had reached far beyond the medical and scientific communities. Local schools had incorporated his tale into their lessons about courage, compassion, and the healing power of friendship. Children would visit the ranch on field trips, sitting in rapt attention as Sarah explained how a brave German shepherd had risked his life to save a pregnant cat, and how that act of courage had led to something extraordinary. Duke's recovery had become a source of inspiration for many. The way he had not only survived, but thrived, supported by the unconditional love of his adopted family, gave hope to others facing their own challenges. Sarah had lost count of the letters she received from people sharing how Duke's story had touched their lives and given them strength during difficult times. As the day drew to a close, Sarah watched from her porch as Duke led his family in their evening routine. The German shepherd settled into his favorite spot, with Shadow taking his customary place near the healed shoulder. Hope and her other offspring arranged themselves around them, their purring creating a soothing symphony that filled the air. The scene was so natural, so perfect, that it was hard to remember there had ever been a time when this wasn't normal at the Thompson Ranch. "You know what amazes me most," Dr. Martinez said softly, having stayed to observe this evening ritual. "It's not just that Duke survived, or even that he's formed these incredible bonds. It's that he and these cats have shown us that the greatest healing comes from love, pure, unconditional love that doesn't care about boundaries or expectations." Sarah nodded, understanding exactly what the veterinarian meant. Through Duke's journey, they had all witnessed something remarkable, the creation of a family bound not by blood or species, but by a connection that ran deeper than anyone could have imagined. What had started as a moment of crisis, a snake bite on a dark night, had blossomed into a living testament to the power of courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds of love. The stars began to appear in the Montana sky, twinkling above the peaceful scene on the porch. Duke, surrounded by his feline family, looked up at Sarah with eyes that held the wisdom of his journey. In that moment, she knew that while his physical recovery was complete, the true miracle was the family he had helped create, a family that would continue to inspire and amaze all who witnessed their extraordinary bond. Dear listeners, we hope Duke's incredible journey of courage, healing, and unconditional love has touched your hearts. This remarkable tale of a German shepherd and his feline family shows us that sometimes the most beautiful relationships come from the most unexpected moments. If you'd like to experience more heartwarming stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the like button below. Your comments mean the world to us. Share your thoughts and tell us how this story of hope and healing has impacted you. Stay tuned for more amazing tales that celebrate the extraordinary, bonds between animals, and the miracles that love can create. We'll see you in the comments section.